then I came back in November of 2018 or 19. I forget, man. But it's been a year.
Right?
For sure.
Like, enjoy the moment for what it is. And, you know, I like reflecting on like, okay, where was I 3 years ago? But at the same time, it's like, you know what, there's just so much happening right here, right now that I don't even want to look back anymore and just kind of look forward.
For sure. Yeah. It seems like a whole different like lifetime, you know? And I used to like have this weird thing where I like after my suicide attempt, my life would be like, oh yeah, that was before the suicide attempt, and after the suicide attempt, that was like this big like change in my life. But now it's like, oh, that's before I moved to California and after I moved to California. So now it's like way cooler to talk about that like that, you know, instead of my suicide attempt being like that big change.
Yeah, for sure. Because that first attempt was 4 years ago or longer than?
My first attempt was 2012.
Oh, okay. Wow. Sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, it didn't stop, you know, until I had two more, and it was like almost 1 year apart each time, which was like real weird until I found out like about seasonal depression and stuff like that. And so it all started clicking once I started like learning more about like what was going on within my body, my brain.
Sure. So was it like a therapist or like your own studies and research that you discovered like more of the root of the problem from?
Oh man, it's been like it's been so much of everything, and for a while it was just kind of like, even when I tell my story to all these different groups and kids and my clients, and sometimes it's like a big blackout for a long time, you know. And when I hear like my friends or my family talk about how they saw me from the outside during those times, I'm like, I do not remember that at all, you know. But it was a mix between, you know, I was inpatient in psychiatric centers for a long time. Like I would do so many days, get out, and then I'd kind of like relapse again, and then I'd be back in. But it really came down to like my own will to survive at certain points, you know. I mean, I was doing the therapy, and of course, like when you're inpatient, you got to do everything. But there are certain things and that have happened that kind of made things click when I was like, all right, I gotta try to get better right now.
It was like you had recognized you were that choice maker. Like if you wanted to fix this problem, you were the one that was going to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, we might have talked about this at one of the festivals, but you know how those.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things that I really find inspirational, the work that you've created outside of the pain, basically.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that life is tough, and I think, you know, basically the audience that I'm trying to bring this work to is like real people. Like we need each other to learn from and heal from, and beyond that, it's like these real stories and life lessons that you can share and again inspire someone to like maybe get out of that dark hole that they're in, and who knows.
For sure. Yeah, dude, that's what I like really dig about like what you're doing, because like a real conversation is like what it's gonna ultimately, that's what it takes. And that's why I've got any position within the mental health field that I've ever had, because they're like, look, he wants to talk about it, he's been through it, you know. And there were so many times where it's like I'm in therapy and there's a psychiatrist looking at me like, I understand, and I'm not taking anything away from their education, but it's like I have like vivid memories of one, and I saw in his office he had these Georgetown degrees hanging up behind him, and I heard him, you know, I'm not like really listening, I'm like kind of blacked out at this point on so many different medications. And he's like, I understand where you're coming from, Drew. And that's all I remember, just like all this like rage coming over me, like, no, you fucking don't, man. Like I'm glad that there are people out there like psychiatrists that have the education, but I'm like, you've never been where I've been, so don't like, I appreciate you trying to help me, but you're not helping me by saying you understand, you know, because everybody's story and journey is so drastically different. So even for me, when I'm talking to people, it's like, I can't say I understand, you know. I mean, I've been in similar situations, but I don't understand at all from where you're coming from.
For sure.
And so a real conversation is what it's going to take about anything, you know.
So are you saying, I mean, in a sense, like these people do spend a lot of time and money, of course, to receive these really valuable degrees, but it's not actually, again, they're not coming from a real life experience, I guess, to provide the solutions or guidance that you really need, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
By the books, right?
yeah. Like, and like I said, like I totally appreciate this doctor in particular. He helped me through a lot, like trying to find what medications at the time I needed. But it was just that one time when he said, I understand it. It's like, if he wouldn't have said that, these feelings that I have, I don't think would ever have came to me. But when I heard him say that, I just started like going in on like, oh, you understand like drug addiction and wanting to kill yourself, and like you've read about it, I know, but you don't understand like that feeling of being so alone, like or feeling such this heavy weight of being a burden that you want to die. Like, do you understand that, doctor? Because I don't think you do. They don't put that in books, you know.
So was it until like you met another person or a group of people that like shared their story that you know?
Yeah, it's like I reflect on it a lot. I talk about it a lot, but there was actually this one woman. So like when you're in a psychiatric center inpatient, you're in this like it's just like a common area, you know. It's kind of like jail, honestly. And there was this one woman. It was like after my third attempt, and I was just like really lost. But there was this one woman who I became friends with in the psychiatric center. She had been diagnosed schizophrenic, but she was so interesting to talk to. And when you're in there, kind of just like jail, you kind of figure out who you can talk to and who's able to talk to you, I guess, or relate to you at any point. And we were going to all these different groups, dude, and they always start out with something like real cheesy, like, what's your goal today? And it went, we were going around the circle, and it came to me. And at that point, the only reason I was there, my goal was to stay alive. And I told him that, like, that's all I'm just trying to get by day by day, staying alive. And then I went to my friend, and she's like looking at the ground, and she says, my goal today is to surrender. And we're all like looking at each other like, oh shit, you know, like you automatically think surrender in a bad sense, you know, like giving up. But she went on to say, I want to surrender to my illness, and I want to start working with it instead of against it, and learning how to live with it. And I talk about these, just listening to her say that in her shaky voice, and I'm like looking down, and I see like a puddle of tears, and I'm like, yeah, for sure, I feel that. Like it's about time that I start trying to deal with it rather than fight against it, because fighting against it was bringing nothing but pain to myself and pain to my family and friends. And so we've stayed in contact ever since then. And I think, you know, I even wear a necklace a lot that says surrender. I mean, she changed my life with just like those words, and she has no idea like how much that meant.
Yeah, it's like almost a real, you know, like an angelic message, just like that's what you need
For sure.
at that moment.
And that's like, that didn't come from a doctor from Georgetown, you know, that came from someone who was there just like me for whatever reasons.
So that was the first time you had been put into that? Okay.
Now, that was the third time I had been inpatient, like in a psychiatric center. The first time in 2012, I was still so depressed at that time that I didn't like take a lot from it. Most of the time, you know, I was there for, I forget how many days, it seemed like an eternity, but I was still so fixated on dying that it was like, I was so sad to be there, not because it was scary or, you know, I obviously I didn't want to be there, but I just was sad that it didn't work like my plan. And so I refused medication for the longest time. I didn't really participate in any groups. I didn't leave my bed a whole lot.
So they didn't allow you to opt out of those things? Kind of like
you can, and for for so long you can kind of fly under the radar until they start bringing like legalities, and they can do like little hearings in there that will force you to take medication and stuff like that.
So that's all. I mean, this is all in Illinois, correct?
Indiana.
Indiana.
Yeah.
Is Rush County?
But I mean, what's up?
What county in like?
Oh, that was in Indianapolis, Marion County. Yeah. So I was taken by ambulance to, first I had to go to, a hospital to make sure I was, they were helping me stay alive for the longest time. So then I remember the time when I like came to and I found out, I figured out that I was alive, and because I was kind of in and out of consciousness for a few days. And then I was in a wheelchair and I thought I was getting out and going home, and they were wheeling me over to the psychiatric center. And that's kind of when I was like, this is real. It's getting very real now. And I just cried for days. And like I said, not for any particular reason, only because at that point you feel like getting even more failure, because I couldn't even, kill myself correctly. It was like, and at that time you have to really face it when you're looking at when I woke up and all I saw was my mom and she's crying, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I don't want to be here. Now you know that, I didn't want you to know how bad I felt.
Idea until this third attempt, or no?
Well, I mean, that's like kind of where my passion came from, because all of this started for me when I probably around 14 or 15. I had a lot of like physical medical issues, and I was in and out of the hospital having all these different procedures on my brain and my head from an accident in high school. And so growing up from like 16 to 18, I was just in and out, surgeries. I was missing just like pivotal times in a teenager's life. And all this time, my mom is one of the most important people to me. So I'm trying to like put on this brave face for her, because she was already so afraid. Every time I'd go back to surgery, and we spent a lot of time together in those hospital rooms, and I'm just like, we like to goof off, so we're making jokes and just trying to make the best of it. But inside I had all these feelings of like really, really dark things. I'm sad that I'm in there, and there's even from a psychological standpoint, there's sad, and then you go into depression and then major depressive disorder and things like that. But at that time I didn't have a clue like what I was feeling. Nobody was asking like how, I know that you could be better physically, but how are you mentally? No, not one person ever asked me that. And so no one had any idea, and I had no idea. I don't even know if somebody would have asked me back then if I would have even known how to answer. So then and I was at 18, and so then I was my freshman year in college. I moved away just to try to get out of my hometown. I thought that would help, a little freedom. And because in my little hometown in Indiana, I was always the sick kid. Everyone knew, like, I'm praying for you, Drew. Like, we've been thinking about you, blah, 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 which was great. It was nice. I get it. But I was so tired of being the sick kid that had brain surgeries and all of this.
Well, you didn't
then when I got
identify with that, like, person any longer, right? You kind of wanted to move forward and like,
yeah, absolutely,
storyline, right?
But it was so tough to move from that, and not only is it tough like in my own head, but you also don't want to look at these people that are coming up to you like, I'm praying for you, and be like, well, save it, I'm tired of it, quit praying for me, So I'd always have to go into these stories like, thank you so much, like, it's been tough, blah blah blah. And it was tough, but I was just so sick of talking about it. So then when I moved away, that's kind of like when I figured out that moving away wasn't going to help anything. And I actually just kept falling deeper and deeper into my depression. And again, my friends that I lived with, they knew, I mean, after the fact, they would say like, oh, there were some signs. Like I stayed in my room a lot. I started putting like sweatshirts and stuff over the windows. So because I was sleeping so much, and I didn't want to know like what time it was, you know. If it was always dark in my room, I'd always just figured it was nighttime, so sleeping was okay. And I had this like, I'd been thinking about suicide for a long time at this point. And so then it was almost a year in advance I decided like I was going to kill myself. And it was just trying to figure out the details and the date and everything like that. And my mom's birthday is February 11th. So I was really trying to get past her birthday so then there wouldn't be this big bad memory. But I went home on Christmas break, my freshman year of college, and I just couldn't wait any longer. And like I said, it was like January 22nd was the day, and I was really trying to make it past February 11th, but at that point I just couldn't do it. And so that's the night that I attempted, and thankfully I called a friend, and I was very like intoxicated at the time, but I was crying, and we always had this dream to come out here to California, and all I said was, you're just gonna have to go to California without me. And that like sparked something in her, and she ended up calling the state police, and they came and they found me, which was great. It saved my life. But that's where this whole thing started. After that, it was like I started getting education on what was happening, and it kind of validated some of the things that I was going through. Kind of hearing like, this is a real thing, you know, you're not just like weak-minded, or, you know, you're ill right now. And so that kind of helped, but it also kind of made it worse, because then I was like, oh, I'm ill, I'm never going to get better, and just kind of spiraled from there. So then I ended up in the psychiatric center, got out. I didn't follow up on anything. I didn't take any medication. And a year later, I attempted again. Psychiatric. I mean, it was like just this vicious circle, and that's kind of what happens to everybody. And until I heard my friend in there say surrender after my third attempt, and that's when I started surrendering. And that's kind of like when I started thinking like, man, I could like do something with this. I could like help. I could make sure that no one feels as alone as I did, you know, those certain times. And it's wild, because I have so many great friends and family, and even as the 19-year-old that I was at the time, I was able to kind of think like, not everybody has what I have, you know. And so if I have to be that person for somebody, then I want to be. And so I started putting it out there, and I mean, I think a lot of people can relate from being in high school in whatever town, but even in a small town, it's kind of worse. Like, I was like, I need to tell my story before someone else does, you know? And so I started being more outspoken about how I was feeling. And then it was like I was just rattling all these cages, and all these people started coming to me like, Drew, I'm depressed too. And I've thought about suicide too. And at the time, it was like filling my heart and my soul, just trying to help everyone, until it came to the point where I was like, I can't do this by myself, you know? And I was taking on everyone else's struggles. So then I ended up attempting again. But then it came to the point where I was doing all this work for suicide prevention and mental health, but I was still struggling so bad and no one knew. But that's like when I started checking myself then, instead of like attempting to end up in the psychiatric center, you know. I started going there just to stay stay safe for like a weekend at a time. Showed a little progress in my head.
So would they provide like what real solutions? I mean, besides medicine, of course, is there like, I get that is a real brain chemistry, like that's the problem.
Sure.
Right? There's just different
Mm-hmm.
releases of endorphins and such that just aren't where they need to be. Yes. Or
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's a number of things that can play into mental illness. You know, you can. I mean, for me personally, I think that it is genetic, but I was living a life that wasn't helping it at all. You know, kind of exacerbating it by not talking about it, and I was, you know, I was drinking a lot, partying, and drugs, and all those things kind of shed more light onto it in the wrong ways. So I just kind of got lost, and it was untreated for so long. You know, I was living with an undiagnosed, untreated serious mental illness that I was trying to work on it by myself, and that's just not how that works. You know, just like anybody, if you have diabetes, you go to the doctor. You know, if you have cancer, you get chemo. I just wasn't doing anything, and that's what led to all these feelings until, I mean, it was just getting worse and worse until it came to the point where I was experiencing psychosis and auditory hallucinations, and I mean, it was just getting deep. I was just falling deeper until I just cracked, you know. But in the psychiatric centers, I mean, it's a big misunderstanding with people. You know, I see it a lot now in work. Families will think their loved one will go to the psychiatric center maybe for a weekend because legally, if you get taken by the police or the ambulance, it's like a 72-hour hold. And these families think that their loved one will just come back and be better. And that's not. Psychiatric centers really are just to keep you alive and keep you safe. And, you know, you're expected to do the rest. Which, I mean, it's tough. It's a double-edged sword because I advocate for people. I don't hate psychiatric centers, and that's a tough pill for me to swallow, you know. But you know, someone like me, I know that they kept me alive several times, but they don't do much, unfortunately. But it's a journey. I mean, they can't hold you forever, you know.
so, I mean, is that all funded through taxes, or you like come out with like medical debt through that, or insurance covers it?
Yeah, well, there's different. I mean, there are some psychiatric centers that are funded by, you know, county taxes and things like that. But then if you have private insurance, you go to different one. You know, there's some that accept private insurances. There are some that will take people with no insurance and stuff like that. Which I mean, that's also just a big sham. I feel like that's a whole nother conversation with that. You know, it's unfortunate even when you look at the differences between the ones that accept private insurance compared to, you know, Medi-Cal or Medicare, and just the level of care that you can receive differs so much in the two.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So, I mean, in like a perfect world where we could create something like for people, you know, tomorrow, would the center be like open to people to just come in when they feel needed to go to a safe place?
Right. Yeah. But I think, like, you know, my goal now is to have that real conversation with people and spread that education so people know when they need to reach out for help. You know, like I said, back then I didn't even know what depression was, or I didn't know what was happening. So I try to get out there and let people know that these feelings are real and these mental illnesses are real, but you don't necessarily have to have a diagnosable mental illness to feel these certain types of way. I mean, I hope that everyone knows to reach out to the appropriate resources when needed, but I know that that's not true. So it's going to be a lifelong thing. And like you said, in a perfect world, it would be solved tomorrow, but it's not going to be. This will be my work forever, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I think, yeah, again, just opening the dialogue and having the conversation, of course, to, hey, you're not alone, just speak through it. And I think that really, to hold back so much emotion by simply not speaking of it,
Mm-hmm.
sure you can cry
Yeah.
it, but like really holding back your own pain through your words and stuff it's very therapeutical to just let it out, whether that's journaling, again, verbalizing it to a
Mm-hmm.
friend or someone who just listened to you. It's important. And that's, again, part of this like whole intention of this platform, to just have like a very open space to like, hey, this is life, this is real, and I'm not going anywhere, we're not going anywhere, but let's like share that, again, insight and valuable wisdom that I think can
Which
change.
is like a beautiful thing. Like I
Yeah.
talk to so many people who don't, they're afraid to talk about how they're feeling. And I get that not everyone is going to be as outspoken of their dark past or their mental illness that they live with daily. I get that not everyone wants to get in front of a crowd of kids and talk about that.
Right.
But the message that I try to get across is like, you don't have to talk to a million people and you don't have to advocate for these certain mental health groups, but just talking about it helps, you know? And like you said, journaling, I've journaled since the first time I was in the psychiatric center, and that's helped a ton. But really me doing what I do now it's all therapeutic to me now. But again, not everyone is the same. So I think talk therapy is a lifesaver, a life changer, you know, for someone who has insight, or for those who are just experiencing severe psychosis, even just like get it out of your head. You know, you have all of this just about to explode, and just get it out there. But people don't understand. People don't. It's not that they don't understand. It's just that they've never even been told that. That's just. It's alarming to me.
No, for sure. And I like to, I've can't say I've ever attempted to commit suicide, but I've been in a very dark place myself where I can remember wanting to run away, but it was still like an escapism of wherever I was. I wasn't, happy. And you just
Absolutely.
want to get out, but there's still getting out, right? You're kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, you can run as fast as you can, for sure. I mean, one thing I have to, I'm trying to silence the stigma that follows mental illness and suicide together. And so one thing I do have to say is, like, no one commits suicide. It's not a crime. I attempted to take my own life, and those who we have lost in the past to suicide, they died by suicide. Commit just has this crazy dark stigma around it. So when I hear it, I try to put that out there, and sometimes when I talk to somebody that has lost a loved one to suicide, and they'll tell me, my son committed suicide 2 years ago, and you just see their eyes light up, like, he didn't commit suicide, he died by suicide. It's a real illness, and those are just little ways that we can silence the stigma for future reference.
But just shifting the conversation and like the way you perceive the whole.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll change it. But I do understand, like, running away, there are so many different ways to ask about if someone's feeling suicidal. From, do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to die? Do you wish that you could just go to sleep and never wake up? Or do you want to kill yourself? And like you said, I felt like running away. That doesn't necessarily scream suicidal, but it can get there, if it's not.
It's like the first step, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I feel that. Because, that's how it kind of started. I wish that I could have just slept forever so that I didn't have to deal with it. And obviously sleeping forever turns into, okay, I just want to die now. So if we catch it early enough, It's a life changer.
For sure. Would you say like it's because you didn't have to, of course, participate in the world? You were just like in your bed of like, of
Absolutely.
not even
Yeah. I mean, even
just
right. Even after like a hard day's work, there's a lot of times you're just like, oh, I can't wait to get to bed and just like turn my brain off. But when you're living in a constant battle between this super dark, depressing thought, it's like I just need to turn it off completely. So sleep was like my one escape, but then when the psychosis set in, I would go days without sleep, and it was just not safe for anybody.
So you would take, I mean, pain pills? What was the main, like, induced? Was it mostly alcohol that you would numb the pain with, or like?
Well, like I said, at the time I was going through like a lot of physical ailments, and so I had a neurosurgeon who, again, he wasn't even trained to deal with something like this. So I knew that he would give me painkillers anytime that I asked, because I was having some very serious pain and surgeries and all of this. So I started, it was weird because it wasn't like when I talk about my addiction now, it's like when people hear addiction, they just picture, selling all your furniture, robbing your family, and buying these drugs on the street. But my dealer was my doctor, and I was taking I started with like one Percocet a day to get rid of the pain until it turned into 2 and 3, and then it was like I never like bought them off the street. I never like broke them down and snorted them or shot them or smoked them. I just felt like I had to take these pills to feel better until it got completely out of control. And then being in the hospital during these like big changes of teenage years, when I would get out of the hospital for a little bit, I would just like try to party my ass off to make up for all this lost time, So if there was like friends that were having bonfires, I would just go there and get completely wasted, not knowing what I was doing. But I was at that time, I thought I was just trying to catch up, just sorry I missed the last few. I was sick, so let's go way hard tonight. But then that ended up getting out of control too. And
another spiral.
Hindsight, it was me just trying to mask all this pain that I was feeling instead of being the super depressed suicidal kid, I was just this party animal, so no one knew.
That's pretty wild, huh? So you're doing like much better now. You can definitely like attest to that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I still, don't get me wrong. I still like
enjoy a drink, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. But but I mean, there are still times that I like, I still battle with what's going on in my head, but now not because of I mean, I don't want to say medication can't help and doesn't help, because it does, and it got me to the point where now I don't need it. But through education and open conversation, now I know when I shouldn't be drinking, or I know when I shouldn't indulge in certain activities. I know when I need to pump the brakes and really take care of my mind. But that came.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that just came from learning about what was happening. Not medication or anything like that. That just came from experience.
For sure. What jobs were you like typically doing at this point, like for money? Like what work were you doing?
I wasn't.
You weren't? Okay.
No, I mean, I was going to school at the time, and I was just like doing like little stuff like restaurants and stuff like that. But it was just like school was. I'd go for a few days and then I couldn't, so then I'd have to get a new job, or I'd have to drop classes because I just couldn't function on a normal level. I couldn't get things done like I needed to. So that was a whole nother thing, because that makes you feel like a failure too, when you're telling your mom like, I'm sorry I lost this job, and she has no idea. She's like, Drew, you really need a job. I'm like, yeah, I know that. It's just hard for me to get out of bed sometimes. And it looks like laziness, but it's some way deeper than that, you know. But
So,
now, I mean, since then, it's like I've tried to make a living doing this, trying to help. And for the longest time, I feel like we're similar in the way that we can see these visions in our head. And, you know, years ago when I first started, I applied for this job as a receptionist at my local hospital. And the entire time, not that receptionist isn't a good job, but at the time it was like, I just want to do this so I can talk to somebody in the hospital and get my foot in the door and talk to them about suicide prevention. And that's exactly what happened. But that, I mean, it was a long process. I volunteered for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for 3 years without getting paid, you know, and just had this receptionist job. But then I finally ran into the CEO of the hospital, and I was like, if you just have a few minutes, I have this to pitch to you. And unfortunately, he had lost somebody to suicide in his life, but that made him really grab onto this whole plan that I had. And he was like, I want to support it in any way. Like, let's have some meetings. And all of a sudden, you know, in my hometown, we're putting on suicide prevention walks, and the hospital started the Drew Hahn Suicide Prevention Fund, which was amazing. You know, it was amazing, humbling. And we started suicide prevention across Rush County. Just all of these great people that had this common goal of preventing suicide and talking about mental illness. And now it's a huge thing. And then I started getting jobs in hospitals in bigger cities. And you know, like I said, when I came out, it's just all from lived experience and meeting the right people and having at least 5 minutes to tell them, like, this is what's happening. You know, I don't have this crazy degree on my wall, you know. It's just things that have happened to me, which I think is amazing. I feel like that could go into any aspect of any job, you know. It's like, you've done it long enough and you have a true passion for it. Like, there are a few people that I come across that, even in the medical field, when they talk to me about suicide prevention, not to sound like a narcissist, but I'm like, I know more than you. Why do you have this job that you have in front of me? But that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, that's again, that conditioning though, of like, you gotta have the experience as to getting the degree that tells you that, I guess, you're credible enough to have this knowledge of solving the problems and such. But it's so simple to me, you know, with the college degree myself even, but it is life at this point. And I think it's, again, so valuable for these conversations to continue to happen. And, you know, the ripple effect that, of course, you kind of started in a smaller county, you know, in a place like that, is just living proof that it can happen. And
it definitely can.
Like one person.
It can happen on so many different levels. And so, like, with anything, if you show enough passion for anything, people will catch on. You know, you start lighting those fires within people about anything, and you're bound for success at some point. You know, it's definitely not going to be quick or easy, but like I said, I was doing this for nothing at one point, and all of a sudden I was starting to get paid for it, and I was like, hell yeah, I'll do this forever, you know?
No doubt.
And hopefully, you know, I've been working, I recently bought the domain names for moreatlassad.com and .org, and it's the same thing. I just want a safe space to talk about what's happening within any aspect of mental health, you know, from someone who doesn't have a diagnosis, negative self-talk, or, you know, negative self-image, to somebody that lives with schizophrenia or has a loved one with schizophrenia. It's like, I just want to invite anybody that deals with anything to be able to be open and find a space that they can talk about it openly, anonymously or loud and proud, up to them.
That's really awesome. Have you ever heard of or like familiar with the concepts of like, I want to say they're like nature retreats almost for people who are in, the depression stage or maybe suicide attempt?
Absolutely.
I want to say they're like 4 circles or something, but I know like in North Carolina when I was up there, I had crossed paths with someone who was like a mentor in that type of therapeutical session. And it seems like that's kind of a newer trending thing too. Do you know anything?
Yeah. There are so many different groups that try to incorporate all these different things. And right now we are like in the midst of a lot of people wanting to get away from medication, which I totally understand that too. There's a big war between, communities, us who deal with things like this and big pharma as a whole, so I have seen a lot and I've experienced a lot. I recently went to equine horses, and this horse ranch is owned by all of these licensed psychiatrists and psychologists, but they put you, in the fenced in area with these horses, and you're walking around while they're talking to you. And it's kind of like you're focused on the horse, but they're asking you questions, and the truth just comes out way more when you're focused on something else like that. I have a pretty big fear of horses, so when I had this big like horse next to me, I was like vulnerable as heck. Just I would have told him anything just to try to get out of the ring for a little bit. But it was actually
where the horse come from? Come on, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're beautiful, but they're big.
I
just feel like they're a wild animal that's way bigger than me. But that day really was, it was like something I'd never experienced.
And simply walking, side to side, of course.
Yeah. At one point I wasn't even walking. I was just standing next to it because I was like just kind of wigging out. But it was still just something different. She was asking me, she was asking me all these questions, and I was saying things I haven't said to a therapist like maybe ever. And I think it was coming from this information.
And to, reflect on, more or less just comparing that space of where you felt maybe forced to like share your story or with, the original therapist with, the degrees and like it's a very boxed, it's not an open space where you can actually breathe life in to even
I think that
pain, right? Do you think that was a big?
For sure, yeah. And therapy, when you don't choose therapy, isn't gonna help. Like when like at certain points in my life, it was like a legal obligation that I have to do these outpatient things, and it's like that's not going to get me anywhere.
Strange.
So like when you go somewhere, like to the psychiatrists and psychologists that own a horse ranch, it's like, no, insurance doesn't pay for a horse ranch psychology. So you chose that and you're happy to be there. But it was crazy to see like they're first they give you the rundown of how horses are so in tune with emotion. That's how they base every decision that they make off of. And so like when I started, I was starting to tear up at certain points, and the horse would stop and she would like start putting her head against my shoulder. Like it was like she felt, it was the most wild thing in my life. So.
That's so cool though. Because at the same time you were, as you were like facing one of your bigger fears at the same moment.
For sure. Yeah.
This whole
vulnerable in every aspect of the word vulnerable. Yeah, for sure.
Did the horse?
But yeah, that's how the nature. That's how a lot of people are doing it now. Which I'm so to the point where the social worker in me, I understand there are some serious mental illnesses that medication is mandatory. Not mandatory, but that will be the most effective way to help some serious mental illness. But to a certain degree, it's like, please just do whatever you want to do, but just be making some kind of movement in the right direction. Like for someone who's afraid of big pharma medications at first, I'm like, yeah, I will take you to the horse therapy if that's what you want to try. You know, I'll take you to any holistic doctor in the county of San Diego if that's what you want to try right now. But just please do something, anything. So I'll never be, even if I go back and get those degrees and I become Dr. Hahn one day, it's like I never want to push pills on anybody. I just want to see some kind of positive emotion in the right direction.
For sure. So with your clients, how does that, I guess, not business plan, but how does that, like, you commit with like a 6-month time with them, or just depends?
Well, I work, it's kind of like a short-term linkage. So I just, my main focus is to build rapport with them and use my lived experience to let them know that what society would call normal and happy life is possible with a serious mental illness, you know, and so the clinical side, that none of that is up to me. You know, I work with lead clinicians and psychiatrists, and we share what's going on with certain clients, and then they kind of give me like ideas to toss to my clients. You know, we move at the client's pace. We never do anything that they don't want to do, but just walking beside them and because like I said earlier, like a lot of people don't have friends and family, you know, which is, for me, it was mind-boggling to a certain degree. I take my family and friends for granted sometimes. I feel like when I see someone that doesn't, so, you know, there's certain times where some people don't hear any positive affirmation for years because they don't have anyone there. So just me being able to walk beside them and say, like, look, you're showing a lot of resilience and you're showing resourcefulness, and you have a great chance to do these great things. Just let me help you, you know. Before this job, I'd always worked with youth, which was great. It was great for a lot of different reasons. One, because I feel like I'm better with kids. I'm kind of more of a kid myself, so I can really get down with some kids. But now working with all over the board, it's even more eye-opening to see, you know, a 70-year-old who's had this untreated mental illness for so long. And that's when, you know, I have to give it to them. Like, they might not be in the best position at that time. They may be homeless at that time, but it's like, man, you've made it this far without any help. Like, can you imagine how much better your life could get if you'd like just let me walk beside you right now and achieve some of these goals? I mean, but we can help with anything. If their only goal is to get a driver's license, it's like, all right, let's go out to the DMV and let's try to make this happen. You know, like I said, we're not pill pushers by any means, you know. But I think that, again, is probably a big California thing too. I mean, there's a lot of, rightfully so, but there are a lot of laws out here that protect patients' rights, and if they don't want medication, they don't have to take them. Whereas back in Indiana for a long time, it was like, Drew, you have to be under supervision. You're mandated to take these medications. You have to do intensive outpatient. You know, I was going 4 hours a day, every day. And that was just so I wasn't sent back to the psychiatric center.
That is so wild to me. But yeah, every state is, of course, regulated differently. And I believe in everyone having that freedom to, of course, choose whatever health care you need at that time. It's your,
for sure.
It's your, like, free.
The only time any decision making against a person's rights is if you're a danger to yourself or you're a danger to someone else, you know. I mean, if you're threatening to jump off a bridge and take your child with you on the bridge, it's like, I'm gonna report this, you know. But to a certain extent, it's all up to them.
It's wonderful how, again, I believe, like, life is just this weird ebb and flow of trying to like figure it out, right? But at the same
Mhm.
time, no one kind of has it like figured out. It's like, what is there to figure out? What are we trying to
Right.
search for anyways? But
Yeah.
it's just staying grounded and minding and shifting like the whole perception of just, you know, life is good and we're like so blessed to be here. And, you know, no matter what
For
like
sure.
story happened, you know, as a child or young adult or even adult, like at
Mhm.
the age of 50, like you can
Yeah.
consciously choose to just start over, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I love to tell, you know, again, you don't take past trauma away from anyone. You know, you hear that out if they want to open up about it. But one of my favorite things to tell certain people when they come to me with any issue is like, I hear you and I hate that happened to you, but I'm focused on what we're doing right here and right now. Where can we go from here to help you cope with whatever may have happened, you know? And I know it's kind of, uh, it's weird because I'm pretty much make a living off telling my story of the past, but it's the big message is every day I focus on what I have to do right now to keep going, you know, to stay alive. And if that's stay home, stay in bed, or go to a music festival, you know, it's like I got to do what I got to do right now to fix whatever may be happening, you know. But it's also when you think about not having life figured out, I love that because so many people want to come to me with these questions, and it's like, dude, I don't know. I'm purely figuring out with you. That's all I can do right now. Is you're teaching me just as much as I'm teaching you, you know. And we all learn something from somebody. There was even a time where I did a news interview about suicide prevention and about staying well and all of this. And when it aired on TV, I was in a psychiatric center, and I watched it from the common area, and all these people were like, "Isn't that you?" I'm like, "Yeah." And here I am, man. I'm telling you, I don't have any answers for anybody other than let's just do it together and figure it out.
That is quite the moment, huh?
Yeah, oh, dude,
For everybody, huh?
for sure. That for the nurses and for the doctors and for everyone sitting next to me, and then yeah, for myself, it was like, oh my gosh. At first, I was like, I hope no one even sees this and puts two and two together. But then at a certain point, you have to be like, yeah, that's me, and I'm here too, you know. So it's kind of a good testament of like no one ever has it all figured out.
Mhm.
I'm just doing what I can, and that's all you can do. And that's what anyone can do.
No doubt. The moment's all we got. So with these clients, they
For
want to
sure.
start with, you know, you said the DMV, they want to get a license. Is that like part of a goal setting plan that you still have in place for them? Or again, it looks different. Just like,
Yeah, it looks so different for so many people, and I like to start out a conversation with like, you know what, when I say a better life, what does a better life look like to you, you know? And then the answers you get from everybody are so different, and it's like, okay, then let's start right there, you know. If someone's like, I want to go back to school, it's like, okay, we can get you back into school, but there might be some steps we have to take in between there, like get a license or, you know, get a bus pass or get a physical done, whatever it might be. But that's a good way to just like get a lot of things done towards their big goal, you know. Like there's a lot of little steps it takes to achieve one goal. But sometimes people are like, I want to get help, I want to see a doctor. I'm like, let's do this thing, you know. But if they don't mention it, I don't mention it. I like to, you know, there's ways that you can bring up like, well, you know, what got you into the situation that you aren't in school right now? You know, what's one reason you're not in school right now? And then that kind of opens up a dialogue of like, oh, well, I got arrested. Oh, what happened? Well, I was like, you know, I hadn't slept in a few days and blah, blah, blah. I was delusional. And then that opens up the whole the whole conversation, which is, I think, a beautiful way to do it, you know, rather than just showing up like, you're mentally ill, what's going on? Like, tell me, get in the car, we're going to a therapist, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's not going to fly, really, you know.
It's pretty backwards, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, you'd be surprised at how that happens a lot. To a lot of people, but I think it's like things like this and people like us that are gonna change that for a lot of people, I think, you know. I don't want to talk about doctors. I want to talk about you right here, right now. What's going on? You know, how can we fix whatever situation you're in right now? How can we make it better? Real conversation, changing a life.
Yeah, because again, I mean, even to hear that they maybe don't have these friends or family or even just a teacher to go to. So again, just be the ears and eyes to like listen to them, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, once I get to share my story, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like an eye-opening scenario for them. They're like, holy shit, he's felt this way. He's been sick, and now he's here talking to me. And you should, you know, sometimes, whether it's in my professional life or personal life, and people reach out to me for help, when I share my story, and especially if I'm talking to a family member and I get to the point of telling them, you know, at one point I was experiencing like auditory hallucinations, and to a lot of people that just screams crazy. And I can just tell if I'm texting someone about a loved one, or if they're face to face with me at that time, you can kind of see like, who am I talking to? Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you're not understanding the way that this like mental health thing works. Like, there's always hope for recovery.
And yeah, to not truly ever understand until you are in that place yourself is just the truth.
For sure. You know, my mom, she is open about her experience of living and just keeping me alive at certain points, you know, and she gets to talk to other family members now, and the way that she remembers things is so different than the way I remember things due to just blacking out for a lot of the times. But she'll tell me, even like, I feel so educated when I'm talking to these families, but I still have to be honest, I don't really have a clue like what he was experiencing at all. You know, she has her experience and I have my experience, and to a certain degree I would never want her to experience what I experienced. You know, at certain points in my life I wouldn't have put my brain in anybody for 10 seconds. You know, it could have been really dangerous. But now it's like, I want everyone to know that not knowing is okay. But being willing to admit that you don't know what's going on is the real answer. Kind of sounds cliche and hallmarkish, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, it's that willingness to, again, like, transform the whole thing into something that can shift your life. Like, I guess there was pain and darkness.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. And once you're willing to admit that, like, just being true with yourself and honest with yourself, it's like things can only get better from there when you start admitting those things, you know. Like, even in my personal life, I'll have friends that are like, Drew, I'm experiencing this, and I'm like, you should maybe talk to a doctor about it. And then you know, they might get put on a small dosage of antidepressant or something, and all of a sudden they're like, man, I feel like a lot better. And it's like, all you had to do how long have you dealt with that? You know, all you had done from years ago is say it out loud one time to one person, and we could have just avoided all of that. Just that education.
No doubt. God, it's amazing.
It's beautiful but very complicated, like, just system, and everyone wants to act like they have all the answers, and that is not the case. You know,
it's like
it takes a village, they say.
For sure, it's like solving this climate change problem, of course, too. Like, it's not everyone's going to have the solution.
Yeah, yeah, it's like
together we're gonna need to solve problems. So
for sure, and everyone needs to be working together and talking. I mean, it literally. I mean, my niche is mental health, but it goes with any aspect of my life from from any direction. It's like I just have to talk about it. There's somebody out there that has experienced similar things in whatever situation. My credit score is low. Oh, hey, mine has been too. Like let me help you try to figure out how to get that higher. Just like literally anything.
mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's
Like just had to talk about
the access, of course, just to YouTube or even the Google machine, of course.
it. Right.
You want to learn something? Search,
Yeah.
ask a question.
Yeah. Yeah. That can get kind of dangerous too.
Oh, I get it. No, it's another rabbit hole, right? You're like, be careful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you having me on here, man.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm really happy that you're open, of course, to continue to share this message on like this beginning of a platform. But I really hope it just really pulls in that next group of people who like are interested in hearing these stories. And
absolutely, I think this podcast is just what we're talking about. Like, there's you have plans on having people talk about a variety of different things. That one listener, each one will be like, "Dang, like that's what I came here to hear about." I needed to hear that. So that's amazing, really.
Yeah. So I'll end on this note, just because I think it's kind of fun and funny. But I was listening to a podcast earlier, and basically the theme that he kind of attributed the whole like audience difference to is like we're all like an ice cream shop, if you will, just flavors of ice cream.
Yeah, for sure.
And everyone likes different things and can enjoy it differently, of course, but of course you got your cone and the
yeah
sprinkles. Like it's all a treat that you can just take for it what it is and enjoy life with it. So again, that's like the whole movement of these podcasts in general. Like they've started 10 years ago was really the big igniting, but now it's like this whole new catalyst of different entrepreneurs and visionaries who see potential for that work. And that's pretty much where I'm at too, because I find them valuable, but I know there's like another untapped, like real people, like forget the pop stars and the real people who have influence to their community and their state. And it just is a whole nother reconnecting thing that I've truly just been blessed and guided to create. So
for sure,
I'm so thankful.
Yeah. Well, I feel like from the first time I met you, I knew that you were even at that time in my life, you were on a different level of trying to make a change. From just like you were the reason I didn't throw a cigarette butt on the ground for like 3 days. And then like when I did throw one on the ground, I remember telling whoever we were with at the time, like I was like looking over my shoulder, like Brittany didn't see that, did she? Like, but that was like a little like change, and now I honestly tried not to. So
that's amazing.
You were on some like real deal stuff back then too, and that was years ago.
For sure. No, and it's just believing in yourself again, that you can have that. You have the power to do it. It's like it's not a real easy thing. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's taking the time and the energy and the effort to say, yes, this is what I'm gonna commit my time to. This is what I want my life to look like, and to feel, of course, so heart-centered, and like you actually are doing what you feel like you came here to do, right?
For sure. Yeah, which that helps a ton, to feel like to feel like you're helping in some kind of purpose that you feel passionate about is an unreal feeling that I hope everyone at some time gets to experience. Unfortunately, I know that won't be the case, but I wish the feeling I get after giving a speech or talking to a kid who comes up to me and says, I've felt that way and I wanted to die before too. It's like just this, I don't know if it's like adrenaline or like it's just this feeling of like, holy shit, like I'm doing something right now, and that feels good. I know that a lot of people do a lot of things for the paycheck just to get by, and it's like, man, I wish you just would feel this one time and you would quit that desk job, or what, whatever you're doing at the time, you would quit if you just had this feeling of like I said, it just feels like my soul, even if I never made $1 from it. I would find something to pay the bills, but this will never end for me now, because I know that like that this is like in a certain way like gets me high. It makes me feel like I don't know, it helps me feel like every time I give a speech, I feel like I'm apologizing to my mom as well, like, look, I'm doing something, I'm sorry for what I put you through in the past, but I'm making something out of it now. And so I get like emotional thinking about that after every time I speak. I'm like, I just hope my mom knows that like I'm sorry. And of course she'll be in the crowd like, you don't have to apologize. It just helps my heart.
The legacy you're leaving to the world. And I mean, if you plan on having a family, or even just your community can remember you as like that person who ripped like
did something.
it's amazing. And just to even hear that you have a foundation, with your name on it, people like to usually like it's not that easy for it to happen, but
yeah. I know when they chose to name that after me, the foundation, my mom and I kind of were just like giggling, like, man, it's like I'm not dead, but then it was like, just take it as it is and just love the hell out of it because it's cool. And I dig it. I'm doing something other than just existing, and that feels good sometimes.
100%. More rad, less sad, baby.
Yeah, more rad, less sad forever.
That's groovy. So I'm excited for that website to be up. You're gonna have to let me know.
For sure. I got it's definitely in the works right now, and I have like a lot of people and you're on the list of people that I'd like to like interview, but I kind of want to do it. I'm thinking about more focus like towards like how Rolling Stones does it. Like I'd like to like have a question, and then even if it's typed, like I want to interview people out here in person, but even if I just sent a list of questions to people wherever they may be at, because I'm pretty in deep with the mental health like culture, I got people everywhere. And of course, like this is way more conversational, but I think just until I get it where I want it to be, I just want to have like a list of questions and explain why I'm reaching out to these people, and then have them type back what they, their answers. So it'll be more of a blog than it would like a podcast or anything like that for a while. And I also like, I have the email, so I'd like for it to be if someone like, I like to write poems, and if someone like fucks with that, I want them to be able to send it to me, and it can be anonymous or I can put their name on it. But if they have a poem that helps them, I email it, I'll put it up there. Like someone else needs to see that, I promise you. Or I want to have like a ongoing like list of like a playlist on there. Like, do you have a song that like helps you alleviate your stress or your anxiety? Like, share it. I'll put it on this list so people can hear it. If it helps you, it could help someone else.
No, I can I see your vision. It's like a platform for people, for tools and resources. Again, for you kind of click and you're guided to whatever feels right. For sure. But it'll help.
Resources in a sense of not like, here's numbers to call, here's a doctor to go see, here's a hospital. It's like, here are some things that you could read or listen to that shows you that you're not alone. And maybe that will lead you to reach out to a doctor or a hospital or whatever you need to at the time. But it could just open your mind a little and be like, damn, I'm not the only one that feels this way. So.
Just like that surrender moment you have. Huh?
For sure. I hope that I've been able to spread the surrender moment a few times. I wish that I could explain to that girl at the time how big of a moment that was in my life, because I say it every time I give a speech, but it's so true. So
Do you
hopefully,
still stay connected with her? No.
I did for the longest time, and then I think that she was still battling pretty hard, and we lost contact due to some long-term hospitalizations from her. But I know that I tried my hardest to get my message across to her, how thankful I was. And I see some of her family. I ended up like talking to her mom, and so I see some of her family on my Facebook. Like, she's still kicking, she's still doing good, but she's just got some other things going on. But they all know. And I wrote it on a blog, a mental health blog, a few years ago, and they put it on their website. So I got to send it to them and let them know that it was their daughter I was talking about, which was cool.
That's pretty important.
For sure.
I forget how to screenshot. I think it's Shift-Command-4. So let me try.
When do I get my peace sign ready?
The what? Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so Shift-Command. I think this is it, right? 1, 2, 3. I have no idea. It didn't make a noise.
No, I saw nothing on my end.
Oh, that's why. Okay, let's do that again. It wants me to select the. Okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I heard that.
Yeah, that's the click. That's the sound one. Awesome. Thank you so much again. You have no idea how much I
Thank
really
you.